Welcome to Lesson 4.10 of the Grant Architect course, where we explore one of the most important but often overlooked aspects of effective proposal development. In this lesson, we focus on narrative alignment, ensuring that your logic model and proposal narrative tell the same coherent story in different formats. Many proposals fail because the logic model shows one program design, while the narrative describes something different, creating confusion for reviewers. Your logic model provides a visual summary of your program theory, while your narrative provides detailed explanation and justification. Both should present the same program consistently. When they contradict each other, reviewers become confused and lose confidence in your proposal. By the end of this lesson, you will understand how to ensure consistency between your logic model and narrative. Use narrative sections to explain and justify your logic model, and create a coherent proposal where all elements reinforce each other. Understanding why alignment between your logic model and narrative matters is essential for effective proposal development. The logic model is a visual summary of your program theory that communicates relationships and flow at a glance. Reviewers often look at the logic model first to get a quick overview of your proposed program before reading detailed narrative. The narrative provides detailed explanation, justification, and context for each element in your logic model. It answers questions the logic model raises and provides the evidence and reasoning behind your design choices. Alignment means both tell the same story consistently in their respective formats. Consistency between visual and narrative builds reviewer confidence in your proposal and your organization. Misalignment creates confusion and doubt in reviewers' minds. If your logic model shows 5 outcomes but your narrative discusses 7 different outcomes, reviewers will question which is correct and whether you understand your own program. Inconsistency suggests disorganization, lack of planning, or rushed proposal development. Even small inconsistencies signal problems to experienced reviewers. Common misalignment problems appear in many proposals and should be actively prevented. Different terminology between logic model and narrative confuses reviewers who must translate between the two. If your logic model says case management but your narrative says care coordination, reviewers must figure out whether these are the same thing. Use identical terms in both documents to eliminate confusion. Pick the terminology your funder prefers and use it consistently everywhere. Missing elements occur when the narrative discusses components that do not appear in the logic model, or the logic model shows elements the narrative never mentions. Both situations create confusion about what your actual program includes. Every element should appear in both formats with consistent treatment. Contradictory details occur when the logic model and narrative provide conflicting information about the same element. The logic model might show 4 outcomes while the narrative discusses 6 different outcomes or different time frames or different populations. Reviewers will question which is correct and may assume neither is reliable. Level of detail mismatches occur when the logic model is highly detailed but the narrative is vague, or the narrative provides extensive detail but the logic model is overly general. The two formats should complement each other at appropriate levels of detail for their respective purposes, while remaining consistent in substance and scope. Creating alignment requires intentional parallel development of both your logic model and narrative simultaneously. Develop together by creating both documents in parallel rather than finishing one before starting the other. As you develop your logic model, draft corresponding narrative sections immediately. As you refine narrative, update the logic model to match. This parallel development prevents divergence and ensures both tell the same story. Cross-reference frequently by checking alignment often during the writing process. After drafting each section, verify that the logic model and narrative match in terminology, components, and details. Make alignment checking a regular part of your revision process rather than something you do only at the end. Use identical language by choosing terms and using them consistently in both formats. If you call something job placement support in the logic model, use that exact phrase in the narrative. Creating a terminology reference list helps maintain consistency across your entire proposal and among multiple writers. Version control tracks changes in both documents together to maintain synchronization. When you update one document, immediately update the other. Keep version numbers aligned so you know which logic model matches which narrative draft. This prevents the common problem of updating one document but forgetting to update the other before submission. Narrative should add significant value beyond simply repeating what is already visible in your logic model. Elaboration expands on logic model elements with important detail. The logic model shows what? The narrative explains specifics. If your logic model shows a case management activity, the narrative describes frequency, duration, approach, and staffing in enough detail for reviewers to understand exactly what will happen. Justification explains why you chose these elements over other options, why this activity approach rather than alternatives, why these particular outcomes rather than others. Providing reasoning demonstrates thoughtful design rather than arbitrary choices. Evidence supports your claims with research and data. Cite studies showing your approach works with your population. Reference evaluation findings from similar programs. Provide data about your community need. Evidence strengthens every element of your logic model. Context situates the logic model within your organizational capacity and community needs. What organizational strengths enable success? What community factors inform design? How does this program connect to your other services? Context helps reviewers understand why your program fits your situation. Aligning activities between your logic model and narrative ensures reviewers understand exactly what you will do. Activity matching requires every activity in your logic model to appear in your narrative with appropriate detail. If your logic model shows group workshops as an activity, your narrative should describe what topics the workshops cover, how long each session runs, how frequently workshops occur, who facilitates them, how many participants attend each session, and what methods are used. Detail consistency ensures the specifics you provide in narrative match what your logic model implies. If your logic model shows weekly case management, your narrative should describe weekly sessions, not monthly or as needed contacts. Check that frequencies, durations, participant numbers, and other details are consistent across documents. Sequence alignment ensures activities appear in the same order in both formats when sequence matters for understanding. If your logic model shows intake leading to assessment leading to service provision, your narrative should discuss these activities in the same order. Parallel sequencing helps reviewers follow your program flow easily. Connection to outputs should be clear in both formats. Your narrative should explain how each activity produces specific outputs, mirroring what the logic model arrows imply. Make the connection between activities and outputs explicit, rather than leaving reviewers to infer what activities produce what outputs. Aligning outputs between your logic model and narrative ensures consistency in how you describe what your program produces. Output matching requires every output in your logic model to appear in your narrative with sufficient description. If your logic model shows 200 participants served as an output, your narrative should mention serving 200 participants and explain how you determine that target number is appropriate and achievable. Do not leave outputs in the logic model without narrative support, explaining and justifying them. Quantification consistency ensures numbers match between documents. If your logic model shows 50 training sessions, your narrative should describe 50 training sessions, not 48 or approximately 50. Exact numbers should be identical. If you need to express ranges, use the same ranges in both formats. Logic alignment ensures outputs connect to activities in the same way in both formats. If your logic model shows training sessions leading to participants completing training, your narrative should describe how training sessions result in completions. The causal connection should be consistent and explicit in both places. Measurement preview connects outputs to your evaluation plan appropriately. When discussing outputs in narrative, briefly note how you will document and count them. This foreshadows your evaluation section and ensures consistency with what you will measure. If your logic model shows certain outputs, your evaluation must measure those specific outputs. Aligning outcomes between your logic model and narrative is particularly critical because outcomes are what funders are investing in. Outcome matching requires that every outcome in your logic model appears in your narrative with appropriate detail and justification. If your logic model shows increased employment as an outcome, Your narrative should explain what increased employment means specifically, provide evidence that your approach produces employment gains with your population, describe how you will measure employment outcomes, and discuss realistic expectations for how much improvement you expect to achieve. Indicator consistency ensures the measures you describe in narrative match what your logic model implies. If your logic model shows short-term knowledge gain as an outcome, your narrative should describe what knowledge specifically, how you will measure it using specific instruments, and what level of change you expect. Reviewing for alignment by walking through each outcome in your logic model and checking that corresponding narrative elements exist and match is essential before submission. Do the outcome categories match? Do the descriptions align? Are indicators consistent? This systematic check catches inconsistencies that develop during the proposal writing process. Cross-referencing strategies help readers connect logic model to narrative. Explicit references refer to the logic model directly. Statements like "as shown in the logic model on page X" or "the logic model illustrates these relationships" direct reader attention. Make connections explicit. Consistent terminology uses the same terms throughout. If your logic model says case management, your narrative should say case management, not counseling services. Identical terminology prevents confusion. Parallel structure organizes narrative to mirror logic model. If your logic model shows inputs, activities, outputs, outcomes, your narrative might use those same headings. Structural parallels aid navigation. Page references help readers find connections. If your logic model is in an appendix, reference its location. Make it easy for reviewers to flip between visual and narrative. Use an alignment checklist to verify consistency. Element check ensures every logic model item appears in narrative. Go through your logic model systematically. For each item, verify it appears somewhere in your narrative. Check both directions. Number match verifies all quantities match exactly. Count your activities, outputs, and outcomes in both places. Numbers must be identical. Different counts signal problems. Term consistency confirms same words used throughout. Create a terminology list from your logic model. Search your narrative for those exact terms. Deviations require correction. Logic flow verifies narrative reflects logic model sequence. Read through your narrative following the logic model flow. Does the narrative make sense in the same sequence? Parallel organization helps readers. References to your logic model can take several forms. Direct reference explicitly mentions the logic model. Phrases like "the logic model on page X shows our theory of change" or refer to the logic model for visual representation direct reader attention specifically. Parenthetical references note logic model location. Adding "see logic model, appendix A" after relevant sections guides readers to find the visual. Brief and unobtrusive. Explanatory references provide context. Statements like "as illustrated in our logic model" explain that you are elaborating on something the logic model introduces. Signals relationship between visual and text. Connective references link specific content. Saying this aligns with the outcome chain shown in the logic model connects specific narrative points to specific logic model elements. Precise connections aid understanding. Common alignment errors have identifiable causes. Developed separately occurs when logic model and narrative are created independently. If different people develop each without coordination, misalignment is likely. Integrated development prevents this. Different authors who are not coordinating cause problems. When one person writes the narrative and another creates the logic model, they may describe the program differently. Communication and review prevent divergence. Late changes not reflected everywhere occur frequently. When you revise the logic model but forget to update the narrative or vice versa, misalignment results. Track changes across documents. Rushed review provides insufficient time to verify alignment. Careful comparison takes time. Rushing the final review means missing inconsistencies. Build time for thorough alignment checking. Alignment matters across all proposal sections. Abstract should reflect logic model essence. Your summary should capture the key elements of your logic model. The core activities and outcomes should be mentioned even in brief abstracts. Need statement problems connect to outcomes sought. The need you describe should be the condition your outcomes will change. Logic model outcomes should address logic model problems. Clear connection strengthens proposals. Methods activities match logic model exactly. Your methodology section describes how you will implement activities shown in the logic model. Same activities, same descriptions, same sequence. Evaluation measures derive from logic model outcomes. Your evaluation plan should specify how you will measure the outcomes shown in your logic model. Direct derivation ensures coherence. Here is a practical exercise to apply what you have learned. Step 1. Create an element inventory from your logic model. List every input, activity, output, and outcome. Include exact terminology and any numbers. Step 2. Search your narrative for each element. Go through your inventory systematically. Find where each element appears in your narrative. Note page numbers or sections. Step 3. Note any terminology inconsistencies. Compare logic model terms to narrative terms. Are they identical? If different, decide which is correct and standardize. Step 4. Revise to achieve perfect alignment. Update either the logic model or narrative to eliminate inconsistencies. After revision, repeat the check to verify alignment is complete. Let us summarize the key points from this lesson. The alignment imperative requires logic model and narrative to match exactly. Same elements, same terminology, same numbers. Inconsistencies undermine credibility and confuse reviewers. Cross-referencing connects visual to text explicitly. Reference your logic model in your narrative. Use consistent terminology. Help readers see connections between formats. Systematic checking uses checklists to verify consistency. Methodical review catches errors that casual reading misses. Build alignment checking into your proposal development process. In our next lesson, we will explore how artificial intelligence can assist with logic model development. Artificial intelligence tools offer new possibilities for drafting, refining, and visualizing program theory. This concludes our core logic model content, preparing us for our artificial intelligence spotlight.